What happens when a leader boldly declares they have no regrets, despite public outcry and mounting political backlash? That's exactly what Sir Keir Starmer, the UK's Prime Minister, did in a tense 90-minute showdown with senior MPs. His unapologetic stance on policies that have cut winter fuel payments, reshaped farmers' inheritance tax, and left renters fuming has turned up the heat on his already embattled government. And as Starmer clings to his controversial decisions, even members of his own Labour Party are beginning to question his leadership. Add a stalled economy, a funding scramble for hospices, and the crumbling state of Britain's roads, and you've got a government on the brink. Is Starmer steering Britain through the storm, or is he dragging it deeper into chaos? Stick with us as we unravel this scandal in all its dramatic glory. From shocking policy decisions to simmering unrest within Labour's ranks, this plot has it all. You won't want to miss a single moment. Sir Keir Starmer entered Downing Street on a wave of optimism, promising stability, growth, and a brighter future for the UK after years of Conservative rule. But 5 months into his term, that optimism is starting to sour. His government is being defined not by sweeping reforms or bold victories, but by controversy, economic stagnation, and a growing chorus of dissent both inside and outside Parliament. It all came to a head during Starmer's first appearance before the Liaison Committee, where he faced a grilling over his policy decisions. The Prime Minister's response was shocking in its defiance. Asked whether he'd do anything differently given the backlash, he firmly replied, "No." He doubled down on his government's actions, insisting they were necessary to fix the economic black hole left by the previous Conservative administration. For Starmer, these tough choices include slashing winter fuel payments, a move that has left pensioners struggling to heat their homes. The government's argument that the measure was unavoidable has done little to placate those who rely on these payments to get through the cold months. Many feel betrayed by a party they had trusted to prioritise the vulnerable. Farmers, too, have found themselves on the receiving end of Starmer's tough love. Changes to inheritance tax rules for agricultural land have sparked outrage in rural communities. Family farms, already grappling with rising costs, say the policy could be the final blow. For a Labour government that had pledged to champion fairness, this decision feels like a direct attack on those who keep Britain fed. And then there's the decision to freeze housing benefit claims, leaving renters across the country facing financial uncertainty. Critics warn that this policy will push more people into homelessness, particularly as the cost of living crisis continues to bite. Even within Labour's own ranks, there's unease about the long-term consequences of such austerity measures. Yet, the biggest challenge looming over Starmer's government is the economy, or more specifically, the lack of growth. When Labour was in opposition, Starmer made an ambitious pledge to deliver the highest sustained growth among G7 nations by 2029. It was a promise designed to inspire confidence in Labour's economic vision. But recent forecasts paint a grim picture. The Bank of England's latest figures show zero growth between October and December, raising serious questions about whether Labour's target is achievable. When pressed on this during his Liaison Committee appearance, Starmer dismissed the concerns, arguing that the forecasts didn't account for future policy changes. He pointed to a rise in the minimum wage and investments in artificial intelligence as examples of how his government plans to kickstart the economy. Still, critics remain unconvinced. Some have accused Starmer of moving the goalposts, noting that he recently added a new target: improving living standards. While this is undoubtedly a noble aim, it has fueled suspicions that Starmer is hedging his bets in case his G7 growth pledge falls flat. Labour's defence has centred on the narrative that they inherited a financial mess from the Conservatives, including a £22 billion black hole in spending plans. But opposition MPs have grown tired of this excuse, accusing Starmer's government of using it as a scapegoat to justify policies that hurt ordinary people. In the midst of this economic uncertainty, the government made a surprise announcement: a £100 million funding boost for hospices in England. Health Secretary Wes Streeting hailed it as the biggest investment in a generation, with an additional £26 million for children's hospices. The money will go toward refurbishing facilities, improving patient accommodations, and providing comfortable spaces for families. On the surface, this seems like a compassionate move, but the timing has raised eyebrows. Hospice leaders had been warning for months that they were at breaking point, forced to close beds and reduce services due to financial pressures. The fact that Labour only acted now has led some to question whether this funding is more about political optics than genuine care. Adding to the controversy is the government's role in exacerbating the financial strain on hospices. Policies like increased employer national insurance contributions have left many hospices struggling to make ends meet. The new funding, while welcome, may simply be an attempt to paper over the cracks Labour itself helped create. Meanwhile, another crisis has been brewing on Britain's roads. Potholes have become a symbol of the country's crumbling infrastructure, with drivers encountering an average of 6 potholes per mile, according to RAC figures. The cost of repairing damage caused by these potholes averages £500 per vehicle, leaving motorists fuming. Starmer's response has been to allocate nearly £1.6 billion for local road maintenance by 2026, a £500 million increase compared to previous funding. He insists this will get Britain moving again and improve safety for drivers. But critics argue the funding is nowhere near enough to address the scale of the problem. The estimated cost to fully repair England and Wales's pothole-plagued roads is a staggering £16.3 billion. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander has defended the investment, urging councils to spend wisely and focus on proactive maintenance. But many Britons, weary of years of neglect, are sceptical that this latest pledge will deliver tangible improvements. As if these domestic challenges weren't enough, Starmer also issued a stark warning about international trade tensions. With Donald Trump set to return to the US presidency, Starmer expressed concern about potential tariffs on UK goods. He insisted his government would work to avoid such economic blows, but critics questioned why he seemed more focused on hypothetical threats abroad than the immediate crises facing UK households. Within his own party, discontent is brewing. Labour MPs are growing increasingly vocal about their concerns over the government's direction. Many fear that policies like cuts to welfare programmes and tax hikes on businesses are alienating Labour's core supporters, jeopardising the party's long-term prospects. Starmer's refusal to acknowledge mistakes hasn't helped matters. His no-regrets stance may project confidence, but to some it signals an unwillingness to adapt or listen to criticism. Even Labour's Meg Hillier, chair of the liaison committee, appeared frustrated as she pressed the Prime Minister on whether he would reconsider any of his early decisions. As Starmer's government enters its 6th month, the public remains deeply divided. For some, his resilience is a sign of strong leadership in challenging times. For others, it's evidence of a leader who's out of touch with the realities facing ordinary Britons. What's clear is that Starmer's government is at a crossroads. With mounting pressures on multiple fronts, the decisions he makes in the coming months could determine not only the success of his administration, but also the future of the Labour Party itself. Will he be remembered as the leader who navigated Britain through the storm, or the one who let the ship sink?